What happens when one of Hollywood's most beloved actors sits down for what should be a routine interview, only to be met with a barrage of hostile questions and veiled accusations that push him to the edge? Today we're diving into the explosive on-air confrontation that had everyone talking, a moment when professional courtesy vanished, and tensions reached a boiling point no one saw coming. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because this story has more twists than anyone expected. The morning began like any other at the View Studios in New York. Johnny Depp arrived early for his scheduled appearance, ready to promote his latest independent film. As makeup artists buzzed around him adding the final touches, he reviewed his notes with his publicist. Everything was calm, routine, exactly what you'd expect from a Hollywood veteran. "Johnny, you look great," his publicist whispered, adjusting his jacket collar. "Keep it light. Focus on the film. Don't let them bait you into anything controversial." Depp nodded, his trademark rings catching the studio lights. "I've done this dance 1,000 times," he thought. "It'll be fine." But as he made his way to the set, something felt off. The usual pre-show chatter was gone, replaced by hushed whispers and darting glances. The energy in the room was different, tense, electric. Whoopi Goldberg was already at the table, flipping through her notes with unusual focus. Joy Behar sat beside her, tapping her pen rhythmically against her mug. Sarah Haynes frowned at her tablet, while Alyssa Farrah Griffin and Sunny Hostin whispered quietly to each other. "Good morning, Johnny," Whoopi called out as he approached. Her tone was polite, but her eyes said something else. "Ready to talk about your new project?" "Absolutely," Depp replied, settling into his seat. "Thanks for having me." The countdown began. Theme music swelled, cameras rolled, and applause filled the studio. "We're here with Johnny Depp," Whoopi began smoothly, "to talk about his new film. But before we get to that," her tone shifted, losing its warmth, "I think we need to address the elephant in the room. Your recent legal battles have been very public. A lot of people are wondering, what have you learned from those experiences?" Depp's smile wavered. This wasn't what he'd been promised. "Well, Whoopi," he began carefully, "I'd really prefer to focus on the work, the creative process behind this film. That's why I'm here today. But you can't just ignore the past, can you?" Joy interjected, leaning forward. "When someone's been through what you've been through, don't you think the public deserves some accountability?" The tension thickened. The audience sensed it too. Depp straightened, his voice calm but firm. "I'm not sure what you're asking me to be accountable for," he said evenly. "I went through a very public legal process that vindicated me on multiple fronts. I'm here to talk about art, about storytelling." Sarah Haynes chimed in, her tone deceptively sweet. "But Johnny, don't you think public figures have a responsibility to show growth after something like that?" "What kind of growth are you looking for?" Depp asked, patience thinning. "I've worked for over 3 decades creating characters that have brought people joy." "That's the conversation I thought we were having." Sunny Hostin, the former prosecutor, leaned in. "Courtroom victories don't always tell the full story," she said pointedly. "There are settlements, NDAs, things that keep the truth from coming out." Depp's expression hardened. "Are you suggesting I bought my way out of accountability?" His voice dropped, quiet, dangerous. "Because if that's what you're implying, we should be very clear about what's being said here." Whoopi raised a hand as if to calm things, but her next words only fanned the flames. "Johnny, we're just trying to understand how someone goes from being America's sweetheart, Captain Jack Sparrow, to being involved in so many public controversies. What changed?" "What changed," Depp said slowly, "is that I realized telling the truth mattered more than protecting a carefully crafted public image. I chose honesty over convenience. Apparently that makes people uncomfortable." Alyssa Farrah Griffin, silent until now, spoke up. "But when we look at the pattern of behavior, the substance issues mentioned during your legal battles, don't you think fans deserve to know you're addressing those seriously?" Depp's face drained of color. His hands clenched on the chair arms. "Pattern of behavior?" he repeated, his voice low. "You know what, ladies? I came here in good faith to talk about a small independent film I'm proud of. Instead, I'm sitting here being ambushed on live television. This doesn't feel like an interview. It feels like a public execution." The studio went silent. Even the cameras seemed to hum more quietly. Joy pressed on. "It's not an attack, Johnny. It's journalism. We're asking the hard questions." Depp gave a humorless laugh. Journalism? That's what you call this? From where I'm sitting, it feels like entertainment disguised as judgment. Whoopi's eyes narrowed. If you can't handle scrutiny, maybe you shouldn't be in the public eye. That was the breaking point. Depp leaned forward, his tone icy. Maybe I shouldn't be in the public eye, he echoed. That's an interesting comment, from someone who's made a career out of being in it. The panelists exchanged uneasy glances. Even Whoopi seemed momentarily thrown, but she recovered quickly. The difference is, Johnny, she said, I've never had to explain away behavior that made others feel unsafe or uncomfortable. Her words hung in the air like smoke from a gun. The room froze. Depp stared at her, unblinking, for what felt like an eternity. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. You know what, Whoopi? He said slowly. I've spent the last few years watching people who weren't there dissect my life. People who don't know the truth but seem to take pleasure in watching a man burn. I never expected, Depp said quietly, his voice trembling just enough to betray the emotion behind it, to sit across from someone I once respected and hear them repeat the same lies that nearly destroyed everything I've worked for. Whoopi shifted in her chair, the first flicker of unease crossing her face. She seemed to realize that whatever control she thought she had over the conversation was slipping fast. Johnny, I'm not repeating lies, she countered, trying to steady her tone. I'm asking about documented behaviors, things that came out during court proceedings. Documented by whom? Depp shot back, his voice rising for the first time. By people who had every financial incentive to paint me in the worst possible light. By tabloid journalists who built their careers on selling sensationalism. You're sitting there pretending to be some kind of moral authority, but all you're doing is repeating gossip and calling it journalism. Sarah Haynes tried to step in, her voice gentle but patronizing. Johnny, I think we're all just trying to have a productive conversation about accountability and growth in the entertainment industry. Depp turned toward her, his stare sharp enough to cut glass. A productive conversation? He repeated. Tell me, Sarah, when was the last time you sat across from a guest and tried to systematically tear down their entire career? When was the last time you ambushed someone who showed up in good faith? We're not ambushing anyone, Joy Behar protested, though her usual confidence faltered. We're doing our jobs as interviewers. Your job? Depp echoed, suddenly rising from his chair so abruptly that his mic pack crashed to the floor. Your job is to interview me about my film, my work, the reason I'm actually here. Instead, you've turned this into a kangaroo court where you've already decided I'm guilty of crimes I was never convicted of. The audience had gone utterly silent, transfixed by the spectacle unfolding before them. Phones lifted into the air as people began recording, instinctively realizing they were witnessing something unprecedented. Sunny Hostin, perhaps emboldened by her legal background, tried to seize back control. Johnny, the court of public opinion is different from a court of law. Just because you weren't convicted doesn't mean people don't have legitimate concerns about your behavior. Depp spun toward her, eyes blazing. The court of public opinion? Do you hear yourself right now? You're literally saying that facts don't matter, that evidence doesn't matter, that due process doesn't matter. You're saying mob mentality should override the legal system this country was built on. That's not what I'm saying, Sunny began, her confidence slipping. That's exactly what you're saying, Depp snapped. You're saying that even though I was vindicated in court, I should still be treated like a guilty man because it makes for better television. Do you have any idea what that kind of thinking does to people? What kind of damage you cause when you perpetuate lies for ratings? Whoopi tried to regain control. Johnny, I think you need to calm down. We're just having a discussion. Depp let out a short, incredulous laugh. Calm down? Whoopi, you just implied that I make people feel unsafe. You sat there and hinted that I'm some kind of predator who escaped justice on national television. And now you want me to calm down? I never said that. Whoopi protested, but her voice was weak, almost defensive. You didn't have to, Depp said coldly. That's the beauty of what you do here, isn't it? You can destroy someone's reputation through implication and innuendo. And when they call you out, you get to pretend you never actually said anything. His voice was rising now, all the calm professionalism that had carried him through decades of interviews evaporating into raw, unfiltered emotion. Alyssa Farah Griffin leaned forward, her voice trembling slightly. Johnny, maybe we got off on the wrong foot. Why don't we start over and talk about your film? Depp turned to her with something resembling pity. Start over, Alyssa. You can't unring a bell. You can't take back the accusations or the damage you've done. And you know what the worst part is? You all sat there and planned this. The panelists exchanged uneasy glances. You brought me here under false pretenses, he continued, voice steady but charged with fury. You told my team this was about the film, about the work. Instead, you turned it into a public lynching. You sat there like vultures waiting for your moment to pick apart what's left of my reputation. Joy, unwilling to yield, spoke up again. Johnny, public figures have to be held accountable. That's part of being famous, like held accountable for what, Joy? Depp exploded. For being human? For making mistakes? For trusting the wrong people? My private life was dragged into the public square for entertainment. I've lost roles, friends, years of my life defending myself against lies. I have been held accountable. What more do you want? The studio was so quiet now that the faint hum of the air conditioning filled the silence. I want you to understand something, Depp said, his voice dropping to a measured calm that was somehow more powerful than his anger. I've worked in this industry for over 30 years. I've created characters that families love, that bring people joy. I've employed thousands of people, supported charities, used my platform to try to do some good in the world. He paused, locking eyes with each panelist. But none of that matters to you, does it? None of it counts because you've already decided I'm guilty of something. You've decided I deserve to be torn down, and you're using your platform to do it. Whoopi drew a slow breath, trying to sound composed. Johnny, I think you're overreacting. We asked tough questions of all our guests. Depp's reply was quiet, almost whispered, but every syllable carried weight. Overreacting? Whoopi, let me tell you what overreacting would be. Overreacting would be me sitting here and tearing apart each of your careers the way you've tried to tear down mine. Overreacting would be using my platform to spread lies about you. The words hung in the air, sharp and electric. The panelists looked stunned, suddenly small in the shadow of the man they'd tried to corner. But I'm not going to do that, Depp continued, straightening, because unlike you, I have principles. I don't destroy people for sport. I don't turn human suffering into ratings. I don't pretend that character assassination is journalism. He reached down, unhooked his microphone, and set it on the table with deliberate finality. I came here to talk about art, about storytelling, about the work that's defined my entire life. Instead, I walked into a trap. He paused, letting the silence stretch. You know what? I'm done. I'm done pretending this show has anything to do with legitimate journalism. Whoopi, clearly rattled but still clinging to control, said sharply, Johnny, you can't just walk away from legitimate questions. That's not how this works. Depp stopped mid-stride, his hand inches from the exit. Slowly, he turned back. The look in his eyes froze everyone at the table. Disappointment, anger, and something that almost resembled pity. Legitimate questions? He said quietly. Whoopi, let me ask you one. When you were fighting your own battles, addiction, rebuilding your career, how would you have felt if someone ambushed you on national television for entertainment? The words landed like a blow. Whoopi's composure faltered. Her history was well known, but hearing it thrown back at her in front of millions was something else entirely. That's different, she managed, though even she didn't sound convinced. How? Depp pressed, stepping closer. Because you're the host instead of the guest? Because your pain was legitimate, but mine's just tabloid fodder? Sarah Haynes jumped in, her tone tentative. Johnny, I think what Whoopi means is that audiences want to understand your journey, how you've grown. My journey? Depp's voice cracked with disbelief. Sarah, you want to know about my journey? I've been sober for over 2 years. I've rebuilt relationships I thought were gone forever. I've found peace with things that used to haunt me every single day. I learned to create again, to trust again, to live again. The room was dead silent. There was no PR polish in his voice, just raw truth. But none of that matters to you, he went on, scanning the table. My real progress doesn't fit the story you want. You need me to be the fallen star, the cautionary tale, the train wreck that makes your viewers feel better about their own lives. Joy Behar finally spoke, though her voice had lost its bite. Johnny, that's not fair. We're trying to have an honest conversation about accountability in Hollywood. Depp gave a humorless laugh. Accountability in Hollywood? Joy, that's rich. This industry protected Harvey Weinstein for decades. It turned a blind eye to abuse, silenced victims, buried stories. You want to talk accountability? Start with the executives who looked away. The agents who enabled predators. The journalist who traded silence for access. The panel shifted uneasily. The power in the room had shifted too. But you won't talk about that, Depp said, relentless. Because that would take courage. It's easier to go after someone who's already been dragged through the mud. Someone who can't fight back without being called angry or unstable. Sonny Hostin tried to recover the narrative. Johnny, you're misunderstanding our intent. We're just asking what the viewers want to know. Your viewers? Depp shook his head. Do you really think people want to see someone ambushed on live television? You tell yourselves that to sleep at night. He turned to the camera for the first time. To everyone watching, I came here to talk about a film I'm proud of. Instead, I've been attacked by people who think ruining reputations is journalism. Ask yourselves, is this what you want from your media? From your conversations about art and humanity? Whoopi tried to regain control. Johnny, you're being unfair to us and our audience. We're professionals doing our job. Depp looked at her, calm but cutting. Professionals? Professionals prepare. They ask relevant questions. They treat guests with basic dignity. What you did here wasn't professional. It was an ambush disguised as an interview. Character assassination dressed up as journalism. He started for the exit again. Johnny, please don't go, Alyssa said desperately. We can start over. Talk about your film. He stopped at the edge of the set. Start over? He repeated softly. You can't start over after this. You can't take back the damage. And don't pretend this was ever about my work. He turned one last time, his voice low but resolute. I hope one day you learn the difference between holding someone accountable and destroying them for entertainment. Because behind every headline, there's a human being. The studio was silent except for the faint hum of the lights. Depp's footsteps echoed as he left the stage. Just before reaching the door, he looked back at Whoopi. And Whoopi, he said evenly, next time you question someone's character, take a look in the mirror first. Because what I saw here today says a lot more about you than it ever could about me. He walked off the set. For several seconds, no one spoke. Then finally, Whoopi found her voice, barely above a whisper. We'll be right back after this commercial break. But everyone in the room knew there was no coming back. They'd just witnessed television history, the day Johnny Depp walked off The View, leaving behind one of the most powerful indictments of modern celebrity journalism ever aired.